Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us this morning on this IP integration webinar. Today, we're going to be talking about data visualization and in particular, contact center wallboards that work. I'm going to be your host today. My name's Stephen Murray and I'm Applications Director at IP Integration. I've been working in the contact center industry for almost 20 years now, focusing specifically on delivering value-added applications into the contact center, specifically in the areas of speech self-service, automation, and data visualization. And I'll be your host today. So, very quickly to cover IPI and what we do and who we are, and why we've got some level of knowledge on this subject. We're a digital transformation specialist, and our business and our focus is totally about the contact center. We work with somewhere in the region of 350 clients across the world, focused predominantly in the UK, EMEA, but also the Philippines. And our range of customers is really broad, covering financial services, retail, utilities, entertainment. Really, as I said, our core focus is in and around that contact center market, and that's our specialism. So, what are we actually going to look at today? Well, the topics which we broadly want to cover is really to have a look at the relevance of today's contact center, what it actually means, and the potential ramifications and impacts of data visualization and wallboards within that environment. We're then going to have a look through, if you like, what we did yesterday. What were the legacy wallboards, and then today's expectations as well. We'll then move on to some considerations that you might want to have in terms of your selection of that sort of new data visualization solution, but also then what we view as kind of best practice in terms of what you need to think about when deploying data visualization and wallboarding solutions. We'll then talk about some new approaches, new ideas, perhaps some things that might not have been under consideration before in your own businesses, and then we'll summarise findings and what we've talked about on the call today. We're going to try and keep this a little bit more interactive, so I've got a couple of polls which will hopefully engage you guys with. So we'll be asking them throughout, and then we're going to open up for Q&A at the end as well, so we can fire in some questions. So please feel free to scribble down any points you might have during the session, and we'll open that up at the end to you. So today's contact center. These are the kind of themes that we're seeing when we're out there talking to our customers, looking at what's going on in the market. First and foremost, we're seeing now that omni-channel will be the norm. This is absolutely backed up by the fact that over 80% of the population now own a smartphone, a smart device. We are constantly connected to the IoT, and we have this proliferation of data and mobile data, meaning that we can really interface with organizations and applications as consumers via the channel we want, when we want, and through that medium of our choice. We're seeing that customers' need for speed's growing further as well. So this is absolutely supported by that sort of omni-channel approach we're offering. But customers are very much wanting to interact with you and expect a speed response that's significantly grown within the last 10 years. A great example of this was last Christmas. Argos delivered against this kind of whole omni-channel need for speed thing very well. They opened up a pop-up store in Cannon Street Station in London, so commuters, as they were on that train on the way into London to work, were able to order their Christmas gifts and products via the mobile app, and then collect them from that pop-up store as they went through. So for me, that was a really great example of how a retailer there is meeting that omni-channel demand and that need for speed. Customers are also expecting more personalized experiences as well. So this term of big data that's been around for many years now, but this is about more than that. It's about personalization of experiences that we're delivering customers. But we have to do that, of course, in an ethical way. Clearly, everyone's familiar probably with GDPR advent since May this year. So it's about how all of that information we hold on our customers, within our organizations, which is vast, call recording data within CRM, all of that order history, How do we offer then a more personalized experience based on their likes, their preferences, but do that in an ethical manner? The increasing millennial workforce as well. This is really something we've seen coming in over the last few years. There is a new way in which we need to engage and treat this millennial workforce that we now have. So a recent survey by Gallup actually stated that a millennial's expectation was to stay in a job for around 2 years, only 2 years. And this is actually even worse in the contact center, with people between 20 and 24 years old expecting to stay in a contact center role for around 13 months. Millennials have a much higher expectation of engagement, the technology which they're using, and the flexibility in which the way they're working as well. Finally, this is against a backdrop of increased customer education. So, the Twitter sphere, blogs, forums, customers are constantly talking out there about you and your brand and your business. They have a much higher service expectation, but of course they want that for a lower price as well. Yeah, so we're seeing much more challenges now with customers prepared to vote very quickly with their feet if their service expectations aren't delivered. So I just wanted to do a quick poll now, which is really around which of those 5 themes are impacting you or that you're seeing within your business. So I'm just going to launch this now. This is interactive, and if you guys would please select an answer. I'm just going to try and launch that poll. Bear with me. So I'll just give people a few moments here to see the votes are flooding in on this one. Couple more answers coming in. Great stuff. Okay, so I'll just share those responses with you. So I think, yeah, as you can see today, interestingly, this point around personalization of experience, we've got 39% of you guys have stated that's the most interesting. Omnichannel, I suppose we're seeing dropping off slightly as more and more contact centers are sort of starting that journey down there, offering sort of omnichannel services for them now. What's interesting as well, actually, is that increase around the millennial workforce as well, and the challenges which we're all seeing, I think, within the contact center of hiring, retaining, and attracting that talent. So thank you very much for your responses and feedback on that one. So the legacy in terms of those legacy wallboards, what are we saying? Well, for a lot of us, and certainly my first experience with a contact center was during a university semester summer job when I was sat on the end of a predictive dialer, I think in 1998, and fun as that was for the summer, it really wasn't. These were the sort of images which I had to look up and see on the end of that AMCAT dialer. Now the reality is that actually many contact centers are still using this sort of dot matrix type display and approach, but it provides extremely limited information. We're talking about pure telephony data, pure telephony stats, meaningless data, and ultimately pretty demotivating messaging. We have these forward-facing contact hubs dealing with many channels, and lots of us are still displaying graphics and data like this. The end result is that traditional wallboards can have a serious impact on morale, which needs to be carefully managed. UK contact centres have an average absenteeism rate of 11%, which is some of the highest of any industry. I suppose the reality is, who wants to turn up for a job where you're publicly reminded that your department's falling behind or failing when it's largely out of your control? The statistics which we might be displaying to agents, such as number of calls in queue. The reality is an agent can't do very much about that, apart from perhaps try and shave off some handling time, at the expense of customer experience. So it's a very, very challenging thing to try and get that right. So we're just gonna share another poll with you guys, if we can. And we're going to talk about legacy wallboards in this poll very quickly. So we're just going to sort of look at the view of who's using what. Are people still using sort of traditional wallboards? Have you ever had wallboards? Have you ever used these with your contact center? So we're just going to look for some responses from you guys on that to see kind of where they are, what you're doing. I'm just waiting for the last few people to vote, and then we'll publish those results. Thank you very much, guys. So let's share that data. So a surprising amount actually aren't actually using any type of visualization or wallboard technology at all, which is very interesting within a contact center today. Again, that really tallies, the number of people still using that kind of dot matrix type approach. It still tallies with what we're seeing very much within the contact center market at the moment. With then the 22 and 17%, perhaps using a more up-to-date type of visualization technology. Great. So thank you very much for your thoughts and feedback on that. So wallboards today, well, for us, it's about meaningful data visualizations. It really, we see it as a sort of critical but often neglected part of a contact center, and particularly on a technology change, refresh, or deployment. We'll respond to lots of proposal bids and requests for proposals here at IPI, and we'll see a huge 200-page RFP talking about all the different omni-channel capabilities and functionalities that people want. And then right at the end of that RFP, there'll be a couple of lines, oh, can we have some wallboards as well? Now, the reality is that the day that contact center goes in and goes live, what's the thing that most people see, most people look for? Well, it's those wallboards. Is the contact center up in the first place? We've all probably been in the situation where a contact center wallboard's gone down, and one of the directors or C-suite walks through, and it's like, oh my goodness, my contact center's down, it's not performing, it's disaster. So they're actually a lot more important than people give them credit for, we believe. So they're the only real visual representation, certainly for the agent community as well, as what's happening in real time. So it allows you to make changes and decisions based on real-time changing data. They're a proven productivity tool if used well. However, many are not. There was a Globo4 survey which found that 65% of employees work harder if they're actually recognized for it. So the statistics are there to back up just if the right data is employed, you'll see reward for it. Today as well, there's the expectation around integration of multiple data sources as well. So not only telephony, the kind of flat telephony data that we're all used to displaying, but perhaps data from workforce optimization systems as well, such as from Verint or NICE, where you might want to show perhaps agent adherence data, show how they're adhering to schedule. Data from CRM, for example, feeds from perhaps Salesforce or Microsoft Dynamics, whatever Salesforce CRM system you're using, to perhaps display sales leaderboards, providing more depth to that raw telephony data that we're all used to seeing. A request we certainly had lots of during this summer was, of course, for a panel within the display for live TV to show England's success, if that's the right term, during the World Cup. So we'll talk about selection considerations now. You know, what we think people should be looking for or thinking about during the process of acquiring a capability. Time to market advantages. We think that there should be a view of looking for a productized approach to the platform you're purchasing. So don't look at a bespoke development or a development project. Look at a platform which is there, proven, open interfaces, and supports connection into the various platforms that you need. Also, scalability and reliability. You've got to understand up or down, how does the pricing structure flex with your requirements? You want to ensure, which the number of contact centers I've been in, where you'll stand at the other end of the room and there's a wallboard, 20, 30 feet away from you, which is meant to be displaying data for that team. You've got to think really then about the ensuring that you get the right number, the right panels, and that's got to fit within your budget requirements. We very much view visualization technologies and wallboards that they should be a business owned tool. Yeah, so this is where we saw frustrations over the years working with other vendors, which was that if you want to make a change, you typically have to go to IT. They might need to engage then a web developer to make changes to those displays. Otherwise, something breaks. That's not ideal. What you want to be looking for is a product that's offering you an interface, which means that teams within the contact center, business analyst teams can actually really take ownership of that, because that's where that product and that's where the reporting should lie. So price and performance, again, this comes back to looking at industry standard components, lightweight infrastructure. Ultimately, that will mean lower maintenance fees and lower ongoing cost. Finally, around the selection considerations, we talk about being able to leverage any existing IT infrastructure and investment that's been made. So, looking at systems that can perhaps support existing plasma or LCD displays, which may be around the business. Looking at solutions which offer a more simple browser-based approach as well, that leverage standard licensing and that get away from what we've seen with certain vendors, which is having to purchase very expensive proprietary media adapters, media players, which ultimately have to be replaced, every few years at significant cost. So we then move on to deployment considerations. So we've purchased a capability. How do we make it sing? How do we make it fly? Well, what we need to be thinking about here is meaningful data. Yeah. So what you need to be thinking about is the visualization of data, which, yes, it has to matter to you internally, but actually it has to show what's important to the customers as well, because that's ultimately going to drive the right behavior within your agent community when they're handling and dealing with those calls. Agent engagement. This is really, really key. How are you actually going to get staff to engage with that wallboard? So again, you need to be thinking about the type of data that you're showing, the complexity of the data, and ensuring that the agents can actually action what they're being shown and what they're being displayed, and that it allows them to have a positive impact on their working day. Physical sighting. Nobody wants to be craning their neck or having to look around, a pillar to actually get that data view. You've got to think logically about the best position for the people who are going to use it to ensure that data is there and is actionable for them. Gamification. So this is a term that lots of you probably have already heard of, but this is about how we use applications, tool sets to actually drive better performance and best practice within not only the contact center, but businesses as a whole. So this could be about actually starting to display a mixture of data. So not only the telephony statistics, but let's say you're pushing out through your workforce optimization platform or through another e-learning platform, coaching and training courses. Then you might want to be able to display which teams, which agents have not only done perhaps some of the telephony work and but then off-call work as well. So, if they've passed certain training modules, etc., and start to represent perhaps some leaderboards or some team type scenarios on that wallboard. Yeah, all in all, again, that Globo Force report I was mentioning earlier said that 78% of workers surveyed said that being recognised motivates them to stay at their company. So, these are the sort of techniques and ideas we absolutely need to be employing to ensure that we engage, keep, and retain, that huge new millennial workforce that we've got coming into the environment. Coming back to that point I made earlier. Finally, I'd say, creativity and logic. As I said there, be creative, be different, try not to get weird. Less is more. What I mean by that is, perhaps the mascot of the company, running across the wallboard and waving before running off, something like that. It's maybe amusing the first couple of times, but when it's spun around the wallboard, 100 times during that agent shift, it's gonna become quite meaningless. And that visualization could be used for some much more impactful, helpful data. So just have a think about that. So new approaches. What are we seeing? Well, on the right here, there's an example of one of our customers. What they're doing is something fairly unique, or relatively unique, we believe, within the market. And this is actually, they've taken the approach of not displaying any telephony data on those wallboards whatsoever. So they're a membership services company whose agents are 100% bonused on customer satisfaction. So all they're displaying is data from their post-call customer survey solution. So the agent will finish that interaction with the customer. They'll then push them into the post-call customer survey as part of their KPIs, and will then in real time display that customer feedback, which will then be presented, as you can see there, in a leaderboard table. It's quite a bold move, but again, they took the view that, if somebody wants to spend half an hour delighting that delighting that customer, and the customer gives them a straight 5, then that's the right thing to do. We're also seeing again this sort of this view of being able to take the data anywhere with you. So having device awareness capability built into the software layer within the wallboard means that you can support that from a tablet or iPhone or Android device from anywhere you are. So perhaps as a manager or an executive, you might be in a meeting, but you might want to see what's going on within the contact center at a particular time. You can just browse straight into that and actually start seeing what's going on as detailed in this image here with an iPad on. Again, coming back to that point around the tool now being a business-owned platform as well, having that web portal access, so hierarchy to control who can administer what parts of the platform, but again opening that up so that again supervisors, contact center managers can start pushing data and messaging and information in real time out to the wallboards and out to the shop floor, as it were. So I'm just going to run another quick poll here. So we're going to talk about what sources of data you're currently displaying on your wallboards today. So I'm just going to launch that. So what I mean by that is, are you just displaying telephony data, or are you perhaps displaying some CRM data on there, some post-call customer survey data as well? So how many data sources are you seeing? So I can see we're collecting some responses on here. Thank you very much. I'll just give it a few more seconds. I can see we've got some more votes coming in. And I'm going to close off the survey now. Thank you very much. And I'll share that with you guys. So a fairly even spread actually across the board. So most people, though, just over half, are still displaying that single piece of data, most likely telephony data, with then a fairly even spread between the other three pieces. Okay, that's interesting stuff. Thank you very much for sharing. So now we can talk about architecture. So in terms of the IPI approach, as I say, we talk about this open architecture that we have. Really fundamental to that is the data collection services that we write, and these enable us, or in this example, to be collecting data from an Avaya contact center system, for example. That, of course, could be Cisco, Genesys, but more than that, it could be collecting information from your workforce optimization solution. It could be taking graphics, images, and pictures, data from external websites, RSS feeds, or even live TV. Bringing that back into the display engine then allows the configuration manager, so the web portal that we discussed about earlier, to manipulate, change, and create, those visualizations that you want with the data that's most important. That's quite simply then pushed out over your local area network onto TVs through a simple browser-based display. So again, keeping that lightweight infrastructure, lightweight investment in what's required. We'll just talk very quickly about configuration as well. So again, what we want to be looking at is having the ability to create, modify, or add components very, very quickly and easily to our wallboards. Again, this is the desire for the business to really take ownership of that. So simply creating a wallboard, we're able to come up with a naming convention, decide the location, site, and what that wallboard is going to do, who it's going to be displaying. And then really this is where things are moving on significantly. We can then start to look at a real sort of GUI type interface with drop downs, where we can start building that wallboard and how it looks. We can choose perhaps the KPIs we want. If we want telephony data from WFO, do we want to bring in perhaps some tables or a graph from CRM? And we can start building that up. We can then start deciding perhaps on the RAG status that we want to apply to it, the thresholds. Ultimately, you can apply intelligence against your platform nowadays to decide, well, actually, if I've already breached a service level against a certain KPI and it's 9:15 in the morning, do you know what? That's going to be pretty depressing for the agents to see for the the next sort of 7.75 hours of their shifts. So actually, dynamically, I might just want to replace that KPI with another piece of information that's actually going to drive and encourage the right behaviours, within the agent community. Again, instead of like in the old world where we'd just be displaying that same piece of information, which acts as a real kick in the teeth for the agents throughout the course of that shift. Very, very quickly then we start to actually build up a basic wallboard within a few button clicks. Something like this would have taken a significant amount of time in the old world, whereas literally within a few button clicks we've created a basic template which we can start playing around with and making look really, really attractive. So I suppose in summary, what do we want to do? Well, fundamentally, we want to deliver the right KPIs in the right way. Agents aren't generally bonused on the number of calls which they've taken in a day. We want to be showing them something that they really care about, something that's meaningful, and something that's actually going to enhance and improve their service. We're no longer call centers, we're contact centers. Again, the term shifted a long time ago. But again, the reality is with many wallboards and the way many people are using wallboards now, we're still only showing basic telephony data. Let's ensure that we're truly reflecting the work our teams are doing by showing all the different channels, or the channels that matter, the interactions that matter. Look towards information from CSAT, perhaps sanitized, filtered social media information, adherence to workforce optimization, and things that drive a more rounded and engaged workforce. Engage agents with visualizations and gamification. So again, as we were saying, 65% of the population are visual learners. That means we respond to pictures and images, far more quickly, far more rapidly than we do with just plain text. On the gamification side of things, a survey by my customer showed that one customer improved CSAT by 10 points as handle time for service center calls dropped 15% in just 3 months alone. That was with the introduction of gamification. Give business the ownership of the tool as well. This shouldn't be the reserve of IT anymore. This should be a tool which is owned, accessed, changed, and managed by the people that need to do the changes and make those changes. So the business analysts, the teams in the contact center, the people who are running the ship, and ultimately need that tool to help steer them on the right course. So if we do all those things, what do we get? Well, the result should be engaged, loyal agents, and then the knock-on impact of that is, of course, happier, more loyal customers, which will ultimately have a positive impact on retention and your organization's bottom line. So I'd like to thank you all for your time. Thank you all very much for listening, and we'll now open the floor out to take some questions. So we'll open that out now and see if you use on the there's a questions box on the webinar tool, which should be open to you. So please feel free to either send them privately to me or send to the group if you like. Got one coming soon. So somebody's requested if they can have a copy of the slides. So yeah, absolutely. Everyone who's attended will be emailing out a copy of the slides to you after the event. Okay, that's on. So just been asked, so what PBX stroke phone system does this work with? So the answer is pretty much any. We can connect into Avaya, Cisco, Mitel, Genesis. Those are the common ones, but of course there's much more besides. So there's open connectors into the into the platform as well. Sorry, I've just got some more questions coming through. Let's have a look. What else have we got? So how much is your web-based wallboard? We can see there on screen now. We can certainly arrange for some contacts after the event with you guys. So we'll get some follow-ups done. We can share pricing with those things for those as well. That's absolutely fine. We've also got what type of gamification would improve increased results? So when we're talking about gamification, there's a number of different sort of techniques which we can apply. So for example, sales leaderboards. So creating sales leaderboards. One thing we've seen, we've been asked to deliver, is actually a sort of Formula One style gamification solution, where we had a customer who wanted to name their various teams within the sales environment after Formula One teams. The highest sales were actually shown visually as cars racing towards the finish line. That had a very positive impact on the sales performance within that team. So moving on to the next one. So how many pieces of information do you think is optimum to display? What would be the max? It's a good question. So it really depends on the configuration and layout in terms of the data that you want to display. So we typically work with you guys to sort of workshop out what that would look like. Ultimately, the real estate size of the screens which are going to be displaying to the agents is kind of key in that. So depending on the size of that display, be it 40, 50, 60 inch, depends on how much data. What I would say is, though, the bigger the screen doesn't necessarily mean that the more data should be should be shown. So again, it's about keeping it impactful, keeping it targeted and focused at the metrics and measurements which are going to help the agents do their job best. So is it accessible? For example, is there a voiceover for visually impaired staff members? So yes, absolutely. So we support full multimedia. The ability is also there to play sounds as well. So we can play sounds again, which are reactive based on data which is being pushed into the platform. The use case, one of the use cases we've had for this, and I wouldn't necessarily advocate it, but we had an American company who wanted a cash register ringing whenever a sale was made. Slightly cheesy in my opinion, but yeah, that's the sort of capability we can have. But yeah, we could also play back, for example, to sort of address that question specifically for visually impaired staff members. We could actually play back from the wallboard number of calls in queue or any of the KPIs which are shown up there. So another question as well, how easy is it to pull relevant and real-time data from a via IP office? IP office, off the top of my head, we've got connectors for CMS, AACC, ACCS on a via IP office as well. So that's very straightforward. We've got pre-built connectors for ACCS, which is the Avaya IP Office Contact Center platform. So again, yeah, that's very, very straightforward for us to do, both for that real-time data from there. Great. So I think that's rounded off all of the questions. Thank you very much for all of them. This session has been recorded, so we'll also provide a link out to the recording as well as a copy of the presentation. But if again there are any more specific questions that come out after the session, then please feel free to follow up. We'll be sharing contact details as well. And with that, all that's left is me to thank you very much for your time. I hope you found the webinar useful. We look forward to catching up with you all very soon. Thank you very much.